The secret meal we shared before the Last Supper. The world remembers the Last Supper, the breaking of the bread, the sharing of the cup, the prophecy of the betrayal. It was the definitive moment of institution, the final Passover that transitioned the old covenant into the new. But I tell you, that sacred, world-changing meal was preceded by a secret meal, a quiet, unrecorded moment of profound teaching that was crucial for preparing my disciples for the ultimate sacrifice. The secret meal we shared before the Last Supper was the only time I set aside my teaching mission to focus entirely on modeling the humility and service necessary to carry the future of the kingdom. This meal was not a formal dinner, it was a simple, hastily prepared repast, eaten in the hours just before the Passover preparations began in the upper room. I gathered my 12 disciples, the men who would soon be arguing over greatness and then fleeing in fear, and I subjected them to a final, unforgettable lesson in spiritual posture. The atmosphere was thick with expectation and earthly ambition. They knew the Passover was imminent. They sensed a major event was about to occur. They were still jockeying for position, still believing that the kingdom would manifest as a political throne. Their minds were focused on who would rule, not how they should serve. Their hearts were hardened by pride, and that pride had to be washed away before the new covenant could be established. The deepest secret of this unrecorded meal was the simple, profound object at the center of the room, a basin of water and a towel. As we gathered, the cultural ritual demanded that a servant wash the feet of the guests. But there was no servant, and every single disciple, convinced he was too important to perform the lowliest task, avoided the basin entirely. The water remained untouched. The towel remained folded. The dirty, dusty feet of 12 men, including mine, remained unwashed. The silence of the basin was the first, most powerful lesson of the secret meal. It spoke volumes about the pride that was crippling their spiritual vision. That silence was the most deafening condemnation of their self-serving ambition. I watched them. I saw the internal calculation, the rapid assessment that this task was beneath them. I knew the arrogance that prevented them from bending a knee. I allowed the silence to stretch, letting the discomfort and the visible dirt on their feet serve as a physical metaphor for the spiritual defilement that pride brings. Then I rose. This was not a subtle hint. This was a dramatic, definitive act of instruction. I, the Son of God, the Master, the King of creation, rose from the table. I laid aside my outer garment, a symbolic removal of my dignity and status. I took the towel and wrapped it around my waist, the uniform of a bondservant. I poured the water into the basin, and I knelt. This moment was the ultimate demonstration that the King of the Kingdom defined greatness not by elevation, but by humiliation, not by commanding, but by condescending. I broke the silence with the splash of water, an act that shattered their entire concept of leadership. Do you let pride prevent you from serving those you deem beneath you? Does the basin remain untouched in your life because you are waiting for someone else to perform the humble task? If the silent command of the unwashed basin convicts your heart, I invite you to subscribe now. Let us commit to the humble service that defines true greatness. The disciples were stunned, but Peter, as always, reacted first, with a mixture of zeal and misunderstanding. When I came to him, he resisted. "Lord, are you washing my feet?" My answer was simple. "What I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this." Peter, still clinging to his dignity and his worldly sense of order, absolutely refused. "You shall never wash my feet." This resistance was the precise, strategic confrontation I needed. Peter was not protecting me. He was protecting his pride. He believed that the Messiah should be served, not serve. He saw the act as a degradation of my identity, failing to grasp that the act was my identity. My response to Peter was the turning point of the entire secret meal. "If I do not wash you, you have no part with me." This was the ultimate lesson in covenant posture. I was not speaking only of physical dirt. I was declaring an eternal truth. Participation in my kingdom is not based on your ability to serve me, but on your willingness to be served by me. To accept my humble, condescending grace, the complete cleansing of your sin and pride. If you reject the humility of the Master, you reject the Master entirely. Peter, instantly grasping the finality of the statement, swung to the other extreme. Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. I had to correct him again, bringing the lesson back to the moment. He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. The point was made. They were already cleansed by my word, but they needed the daily, humbling cleansing from the dust of their pride and their journey. The secret meal was about daily spiritual maintenance. I returned to the table and delivered the final, non-negotiable command, sealing the purpose of the secret meal. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you should do as I have done to you. This was my message of radical reciprocity. The grace I extended to them was not meant to terminate with them. It was meant to circulate through them. The purpose of receiving my service was to imitate my service. The height of their privilege was to become the depth of their service. The lesson was that their future authority would not be rooted in their theological degrees or their visible miracles, but in their lowly service to one another. I was installing the governing principle of the church. Love is demonstrated by condescension and humility. This command was a final act of grace directed at the moment of ultimate betrayal. I knew Judas was about to leave the table to execute his plan. I knew the hearts of all of them were tainted by ambition. By washing their feet, I was offering a final opportunity for humility and cleansing, even to the betrayer. I washed the feet of the one who would sell me, demonstrating that my grace extends even to the soul that plots my destruction. My service was offered unconditionally to the ungrateful and the traitor alike. Do you struggle to serve those who have hurt you, or those you know are walking a path of betrayal? Remember that I washed the feet of Judas. My service is the template for forgiveness. If the challenge of unconditional service compels you to greater love, share this narrative. Let the world see the true face of Christian humility. Before you proceed, make sure you are subscribed. The 4th chapter reveals the lasting power of this meal. The secret meal was essential preparation for the Last Supper and the cross. By kneeling before them, I was not merely teaching a lesson in manners, I was modeling the sacrifice that was about to occur. Laying aside my outer garment was the precursor to laying aside my divine prerogatives and ultimately my life. The water and the towel were the symbols of the cleansing blood and the covering righteousness that I was about to provide on the cross. We were showing them, through a simple household ritual, the ultimate humiliation I would endure for their total cleansing. The feet, which carried the dust of the road, represented the human condition, constantly defiled, constantly in need of washing. My action proved that the only way to remain clean for the journey is through my ongoing, humble service. This secret meal cemented the theological truth that service and sacrifice are inseparable. You cannot talk about the love of the cross without embracing the humility of the basin. The two rituals are bound forever. The basin of service validates the blood of sacrifice. When they would later recall the broken bread and the poured wine of the Last Supper, they would first remember the water poured over their dusty feet. They would understand that the power of the Eucharist is rooted in the humility of the servant. The legacy of the secret meal is not the memory of the food, but the command of the basin. It established the eternal truth that the character of the kingdom is defined by downward mobility. The greatest person in my kingdom is the one who kneels lowest. The highest honor is to take the position of the servant. My action reversed the world's power structure and the disciples' internal pride, creating a new spiritual law. True authority is expressed through genuine vulnerability. This quiet, unrecorded meal taught them the final truth they needed before the storm broke. The only way to overcome the fear and ambition that leads to abandonment is through radical self-forgetfulness in the act of serving others. When they would flee and fail, they would remember me kneeling before them, washing their feet. And that memory would draw them back, not in shame, but in humble submission to the Master who loved them enough to serve them. The basin of water was their anchor in the coming storm of betrayal. Is the lesson of the basin alive in your life? Are you using your position, your talents, or your resources to elevate yourself or to kneel and serve those who cannot repay you? The secret meal demands a public response of humility. Subscribe now and dedicate yourself to the upward path of downward mobility, making the Master's service your own. The secret meal we shared before the Last Supper was the definitive act of love and humility, proving that the King of Glory is also the servant of all. And that towel wrapped around my waist remains the eternal symbol of the one true form of leadership in my eternal kingdom.